YouTube Ozick going. The Goat House is back. Today, we're breaking down NFL coaches who are on the hot seat, could be potentially on the hot seat. Maybe some coaches that a lot of people out there think are or should be on the hot seat. I don't think so. We'll break it all down. It's basically a big hot seat video. I made tiers. We're placing these coaches in the tiers. At the top, it's the piping hot seat. At the bottom, it's won't be fired quite yet seat. And a lot in between, so excited to break it all down here. I talked about it on Twitter, made a post here on YouTube as well. We're going to be trying to add a different video every Friday into the rotation here, something that all fans can enjoy, get behind, appeals to everyone. We are dumping the Thursday Night Football recap video. Not a lot of views, appealed to one fan base every Thursday. We're going to throw that recap in with that big Monday recap video, of course. So, So make sure you join us for all this NFL content here. Got weekly picks, a lot more. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We have picks leagues with prizes, ways for you guys to get involved. You are not too late if you want to join that. Link pinned in the comments. GLD shop, I'm rocking the chain. They hooked us up with a GOAT, and they got NFL teams made for real gold. Chains as well, very affordable. We have a code GOAT. NFL players wear their stuff. More and more players getting on board. So link down below for their site, and then there's our code. So again, any link you're looking for, pin in the comment section. So yeah, on Twitter, I talked about this, what we're doing here, dumping that Thursday night recap. I'm always taking suggestions here. So one of our super followers, appreciate you for being a super follower, Mr. Fresh Skid, mentioned the hot seat type of video, and it hit me. I was like, yeah, a lot of people are talking about this. It's a very hot topic right now. Surprisingly, this early in the season, he's only going into week 3, so let's do it. I thought of the tier idea, so I love it here. So let's do it. We're starting with, at the top, the piping hot seats. So coaches that may not finish the season, maybe their time's up very, very soon. Maybe they're fired at the end of the season. Any of those there. And I think Matt Rule is the king. He is the king. A king you don't want to be, of the piping hot seat. Here, he leads the way. Like he is right now, he is most likely to be the first. If you're a crazy betting man or woman, and you want to bet on the first coach to be fired, I think Matt Rule could be your guy. I'd say maybe not, so why I wouldn't bet on it, not so fast, and that would be because Frank Reich, and we'll talk about that in a second. First, we're going to start with Matt Rule, but yeah, he barely hung on heading into this year. Right at the end of last year, he barely hung on to his job. They wanted to give him another shot, got him a new offense coordinator, Ben McAdoo, who's a big blame for a lot of this through only 2 weeks so far, but a big blame. But yeah, just not getting the job done, and the offense, certainly the play calling, play choices, the game plan, so that's on McAdoo as well, but it's got to be on Rule as well. He's the head coach. But a big thing is, you go into the season, you play the Browns week 1. They don't have Deshaun Watson, obviously. It's a very winnable game. And it was a winnable game when it came down to it if it wasn't for the terrible start. And then you play the Giants. I don't care that they're 1-0 at the time. It's a very winnable game, and it was a winnable game to the end, and they couldn't execute. So looking at that, it's not like they played the Bills and the Chiefs or whatever to start the season. So it's a big time disappointment already, and he barely hung on. He was already on thin ice, so that would be the reason he's the next guy to go, and it could be the first guy to go, and it could be very, very soon. So that is why he's up there. Frank Reich would be next, and I think Frank Reich is a far better coach than Matt Rule, far better. But why I could argue Reich could be next is because, the Panthers play the Saints this week. I picked the Saints. I expect the Saints to win, but it's in Carolina. Panthers could win that game. They could. They were close to winning the last 2. They could win that game, and if they do, which is realistic, even though it's not my pick, but then it kind of buys Rule some more time, right? Reich could go in there and very easily lose to the Chiefs, still without a win. They got a tough schedule to start in general, so that could kind of bump him up. Maybe be the guy to, be fired the soonest, I suppose. But I wouldn't really agree with it. I don't really agree with Reich being on the piping hot seat, even though I put him up here. I put him up here because it's just what it is. It really feels like it. Everyone's talking about the Colts are disappointing. They're supposed to win a division this year. There's still a lot of season left, but and it's kind of what talk is right now. And it almost felt like they could move on from the past, even though I never thought it would happen. So he could be on thin ice, and they could be starting with a very bad record. So reality is he's up here. I don't really think he should be up here. Should he be on some sort of hot seat? I'd say yes. I think he's better than what people talk about. But he's to blame for a lot of this. I almost put Ballard, the GM, on more of the piping hot seat, more of a hot seat than Reich, I should say. Because I just don't think he's supplied he's put together some solid teams. He's drafted okay here and there, solid here and there. But I don't think he's done the best he could possibly do, and that's why I can't stand when GMs do that. He makes a splash trade every offseason, and that's kind of it. We're going to rely on development. We're going to save a load of money for the futures for extensions, but you still got a load of money to spend right now, and it really is showing this year. Looking at the receiver position, even if guys are healthy, you need receivers, but Pittman goes down. You got no receivers out there, Offensive line, it was once elite, not so much anymore. They're kind of relying on developing the guys they have. Maybe Reich's involved in some of that as well, but very possible. But it's just too. And they don't. After Leonard, or Leonard being out, do they have the depth in the key spots? Not really, because they kind of rely on what they got. Defensively, they do have some talent. I know Leonard's been out, but they do have some talent. But Gus Bradley's defense hasn't really been great. Over the last few years. It's been some time since he's been good. I think it's easy to game plan for that defense. So all of that, with injuries, the best talent's not out there. Matt Ryan's not playing well. The way the defense is coached. So some of that is really out of Reich's control. You can't say fully because he's the head coach. So I don't know if he really should be up here, but reality is that he is. So That's my take on Reich. A little different than Rule, and he has a possibility of being fired before Rule. I wouldn't count on it, but it's a possibility. Ron Rivera I put on here as well. And we got to see what the Commanders do. A big game against the Eagles this week. That's why it's still early. But he's a defensive-minded coach. Was once a very good defensive coach. So this defense should be at least decent, right? No, it's maybe the worst in football right now. It is pretty bad. It's early, but it's not looking promising. The next biggest name they have is Jack Del Rio, who's, he played in the NFL for a long time, just like Ron Rivera. They're great defensive players, and they were great defensive coaches as well. And it's just not, they're supposed to be a defensive team. So obviously it's not working. And if that front office thinks they have talent out there, and they definitely have weapons at the receiver position on offense, I should say in general, and they have the potential to be an explosive offense, but meanwhile you have these defensive coaches, and you're not even taking advantage of that, and you're losing games because there's no, like the last week against the Lions, there's no game plan. It was clear there was no solid game plan for that game. It took a bit to get the adjustments down. I will say they did adjust a little bit, but it just doesn't look good. That's not a good look there. So if they lose the Eagles at home this week, maybe that, he's already kind of in the popping height area range for me at the moment, as you can see. But yeah, it's an interesting one. The reasons I explain, and the more I say it out loud, it's like, yeah, like we're not taking advantage of what we got. The Commanders' front office could be saying, ownership could be saying that, rightfully so. So these are the three guys. They're on the piping hot seat. May not finish the season. Could be fired anytime. Could be fired. Maybe it's at the end of the season. It's possible as well. Moving on to my next tier, the hot seats. And it ended up being the Smith seats because there was two Smiths in here. So I thought that was funny. 2022 might be it for them. I don't think these guys will be fired next week, the week after, week 10, week 15. You get the idea. They could be fired after the end of the year. They're on the hot seat for the end of the year. They could be kept. They could be retained as well. But Lovie Smith, the Texans, just what they did last year with Culley, they were good with moving on from him after 1 year. Kind of felt like they knew he was their bridge coach. There was really no way he was going to keep his job unless he did something unrealistic, obviously. And it could be the same thing with Lovie Smith. It felt like, we wanted this guy, wanted that guy. No, we'll go Lovie Smith, and we'll try it out for a year. That's kind of what it felt like when they hired their coach, Lovie Smith. So maybe the guy they're looking for, maybe they think he's creeping around the corner for this next offseason, or maybe it's the next one after that. They seem to be really in on Josh McCown, but just don't think he's ready yet. Maybe it's going to be weird though if they all of a sudden think he's ready after another. It's just what is he? How is he preparing? It's a whole different debate. It's weird, but I definitely think I could see it. I could see him moving out from Lovie Smith, and it'd be obvious that it was a kind of a bridge coach again. And Arthur Smith could be moved on from you. They blew two games. Well, I can't say they blew two games. They blew the first game against the Saints. Second game against the Rams, they could have won. So there's a lack of execution in there, but they are kind of in that rebuild area range. So maybe it gets a pass, but at the same time, they're kind of entering that rebuild. They don't want to be in stage one going into next year. So maybe they want to find the right coach to go along with that. So the front office and ownership could just rather have somebody else. I think that's definitely possible. He's been a little disappointing so far, even though I do like his offense. I like his playbook. I don't mind his play calling. He maybe doesn't have the full pieces yet. He definitely doesn't yet. So I'm going to say if I had to predict, I'd say he gets another year. but it's one that it could be it, just because it could be a disappointing year, and they could be looking for, maybe they feel like there's a better guy out there because they're going to get going now, because this offseason they move on from some guys, Matt Ryan, and they're just going to get going now. Maybe they want that right piece to grow with their pieces that they're going to add, that they're adding. So I do think it's realistic that he could be gone. So that is the hot seat, guys. Only two, the Smiths. Not related. The not as hot as you think seat. So I think a lot of people will talk about these guys being extremely hot right now on the hot seat, but for sure being on the hot seat, things like that. I think there's maybe warm. Maybe it's a warm seat. Like I'm saying, like possibly let go after 2022. Definitely could say that. So I'm not saying not hot at all, just not as hot as you think. So really anything's possible. But Mike McCarthy, people talk about him left and right. He's got to be fired. We know Jerry gets attached to guys. I definitely think he wants to give him more of a run. Some people think he was almost fired after last year. I'm not really sure almost is the right word, but I guess if that's true, then maybe. But then at the same time, Jerry in that front office had to kind of deal with cap situations, make the team worse almost on paper in the offseason. So that's not really Mike McCarthy's fault. Plus Dak gets hurt. Plus Tyrone Smith gets hurt. And more guys. They lost guys as well. So a lot of that's not Mike McCarthy's fault. So he probably gets a pass, even though I don't know if the pass was necessary, because I think they're going to give him another shot anyways, but he probably gets a pass. But I wouldn't count it out, because, again, there were reports that the Cowboys really thought about it, so that would mean he'd be on thin ice a little bit this year, so therefore he could be let go. Yeah, people talk about it. Cliff Kingsbury, they talk about the end of last year, he should be fired. They talk about this year. He got extended as well. That's why I think people forget that, and that's why I think he's probably got more of a shot, more of an opportunity. But yeah, the Cardinals are extremely disappointing. Which they clutched up and won that last game, but they were very underwhelming, for like 6 or so quarters so far. But he definitely has to clutch up at the end of the year, figure it out. But I can't rule it out. But I think they're gonna give him more of a shot. So I think it's just not as much on the hot seat as people think. And then Nathaniel Hackett, it's only been 2 games, but it's been pretty brutal. Like, just things that I'm seeing that don't really get better in the NFL. NFL teams know that they don't really get better with coaches. It's either you got it or you don't. If you struggle with clock management and just simple play calling and situational things, then you're going to continue to struggle. Maybe not as much, but you continue to struggle. So, and he's been blatantly bad. It's only been 2 weeks, but people are talking about like crazy. Is he even going to make it a second year? Because it's a valid point, because the Broncos got such a talented team, and you don't want to waste Russell Wilson's time, that you want to get the best possible coach in there, and so this isn't working out. So therefore, I can see them moving on from him after just 1 year. If he continues to where he's at, I very, very well could see that. But it's tough to put him on a higher tier, or one of the earlier tiers we talked about. Right now, it's only been 2 weeks. They definitely want to give it more of a shot. I can see them, even if he struggles this year, giving another shot next year. So it's all possible there. But people are talking like these 3 guys are pretty much done after this year, and I don't really agree with that talk. If you're talking like that, it's possible. Like I said, it's possible, but I don't really agree with, I think some people talk like these guys are on the piping hot seat, or maybe the hot seat. I don't really agree with it. The wild card seat, so guys that are kind of wild cards to be fired, at the end of the season. Put Dan Campbell in there. I wouldn't really expect it. They like him a lot over there. Very likely back for these guys, but I wouldn't call it a lock to be back. Campbell struggled last year with things. There's some questionable decisions in week 1 as well, but very good week 2. It's a likable guy. He's got the locker room. So, I don't think they would be done with him after this year. And there's some promise for the Lions. He's only basing it off of 1 week, but last week. So I wouldn't expect it. And Kevin Stefanski, there was a game last night, the Browns and the Steelers, which the Browns won, and I love the adjustments on offense, and I like the play calling down the stretch. But it was such an up-and-down game for Stefanski with the play calling, because it was kind of bad right off the bat. It gets pretty predictable. It's kind of the same thing over and over again, but then there's some times where he really outsmarts himself. And is it that West Coast style offense? It almost feels like, I try to explain this to people. It's a little difficult to explain, but it almost feels like the play caller is the guy, or he thinks he's the guy. Like, the offense runs through him. For me, I think the talent, it should run through the talent. And you could argue it runs through Chubb, but it's just more of, the system. Run the ball, run the clock, win the time of possession, I think the coach is kind of like the system is kind of the guy, if you know what I mean, where other systems like what the Browns are running, or excuse me, what the Bills are running, or like the quarterback's the system in most of those. So my point is with Deshaun Watson coming in next year, do they view it as a fit? Well, actually coming in later this year, but kind of being the guy, going forward, do they view it as a fit? Is he willing to adjust a little bit? Do they still want the same style offense? And he's kind of had his bad moments here and there. First year was good, but he's been really inconsistent, like up and down. So these guys, like I kind of can see as wild cards, like it's possible. I'm just really not counting on it. I think they're very likely back. So interesting tier there. That's the Pete Carroll seat tier, and Pete Carroll is in this one. But you probably could have guessed that. He's got his own one just because, I think people would talk about him being on the hot seat or going to be fired. I do not see Pete Carroll. I don't see that breaking news. The Seahawks have fired Pete Carroll. I just really don't see it happening. I think he's going to, it's a retirement question mark. Is he going to retire, or is it going to be like, which sometimes is a firing. We just don't know it. It's kind of hidden. But a mutual agreement to move on, and maybe he retires after that. Like both sides have agreed to move on, like it's time. Maybe deep down it is a firing, but it just won't be put that way. So that's kind of what I see. Or he kind of stays on. I think it could be his choice. I just don't see him being shit canned. I just don't see that at all. So that's why Pete Carroll has his own tier. And the won't be fired seat, some guys that are mentioned by people, or probably would be mentioned by people already or during the year. You see at the bottom, I put coaches not mentioned in this video or on this list are locks to return. In my opinion, there could be one shocker, sure. But yeah, these guys I'm very confident will be back for 2023. The won't be fired seat. Zach Taylor, which there's Bengals fans calling for him to be fired. I just don't agree with that at all. They're not going to just let him go just like that. Like he's going to have another pretty bad season. The season's first is going to have to be really bad. It's 0-2 right now. It's just the start. So I think he's a good play caller. People will disagree with that. Of course he'll have his bad moments here and there. They're pretty limited right now because there's no blocking, and Burrows and a little bit. He's coming off of having surgery right before the year, and he's a little bit in that panic mode too easy. So they got to figure something out right now. I just don't see them firing Taylor off of one rough year after just being in the Super Bowl. Then Josh McDaniels starting 0-2. They play the Titans this week. That game can go either way, so maybe it can be a big disappointment. Which the Raiders, I think in that room, their expectations is win a Super Bowl. Maybe they're like, yeah, that's our expectations. Maybe we don't fully expect to win one this year. I could see that, but their expectations to be a very good football team with the talent they have and they brought in. So if he's just a big disappointment, I could see people talking about it, but I just do not see him being fired after 1 year. I mean, they have Ziegler in there, Patriots tree, McDaniels. He's not going to move on from, and then they got McDaniels first on top of it. They're not going to move on from McDaniels just like that. I think they got guys to kind of fit what he's trying to run there. I think the defense is still, they got Patrick Graham in there who could be a head coaching candidate. And they know that defense on paper is a work in progress to, get Graham's defense to where it could be, which is great. So I think it's all still like, even though we should be better than this, I think they're going to be thinking we should trust the system still. We're going to get there. It's just still a little bit of a work in progress, even though we should be a good team right now. Mike Vrabel really shouldn't have to be on this list. He had a bad outing in week 1 with whatever the decisions were late, and so did Downing, their offensive coordinator, their play caller. They move on from him probably. But Vrabel, the reigning coach of the year, there's just no way. People will bring it up just because the Titans have been extremely disappointing so far, kind of like McDaniel's situation. I just don't see them firing Vrabel. No one's really bringing up Dennis Allen, but I think people probably will if for some reason the Saints are like struggling, or I don't really see them really struggling, but because I think they're a good team, but or maybe like around 500, whatever. I could see people bringing it up, like, oh, first year without Sean Payton, Dennis Allen, the guy can't do it, get him out of here. I could just see it. They like Dennis Allen in there. They like him running that defense. I do not think they give up on him after 1 year, unless Sean Payton's like, hey, I'm coming back. Then I guess we can, discuss something different. But Brandon Staley, no one's really discussing this, but I mean, if the Chargers, for some weird reason miss the playoffs again, or maybe they make the playoffs, but they're kind of disappointing and they lose in the first round because of coaching decisions, I think people probably would bring it up, but I think most likely the Chargers will be in pretty good shape where he won't, be, on any type of hot seat. Robert Saleh, I don't think will be fired. The Jets. I think people will bring it up because the Jets could struggle the rest of the year again. It's possible, or the year as a whole. But I think they like him too much. I think they're still building. They're still in the kind of a work in progress, building what they can become. They're not expecting a whole lot right now. But I think people will kind of bring him up just because. Because maybe the Jets could struggle. So anybody else not mentioned? Yeah, I think they're safe. So I think next Friday we can do the way too early top or most likely head coaching candidates for 2023. There's some good ones out there, so we can discuss that maybe on a Friday, an updated mock draft in the near future, updated playoff predictions, things like that. I usually do rookie rankings, and I usually start it as the year gets going, and that's been one that has been a lot of work and surprisingly not getting many views. But I was going to make it a Twitter super followers thing, but a lot of people have been asking me about them. So it's almost like maybe do I have to bring them back? So, which is a little surprising because they didn't seem super popular. I like the idea of them. So I haven't made up my mind on that. That could be a Friday thing in the future. But I always like the season to get rolling. So a lot more videos that everyone could get behind. More than just we're looking for that maybe that next weekly picks video, power ranking, score predictions that comes out consistently that everyone loves. So that is the reason why we kind of moved on from that Thursday night recap video for things like this. So really excited about it here. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I know everyone probably has different coaches in different tiers, and that's the cool part about it. So I'm curious to see everyone's thoughts there. Follow us on Twitter. Always talking with you guys there. Super followers are getting loads of bonus content. We're talking during live games on there as well. Full NFL coverage here, even in the offseason. So join us, like, subscribe to notifications on. Be much appreciated. Also much appreciated for watching this video. And there's links, very important links pinned in the comments if you're looking for them. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.